Hello and welcome. I'm Brossard, and here's what happened this week. Around a dozen Chinese Coast Guard ships and other vessels were spotted near Taiwan's outlying Kinmen Islands on Thursday, with some entering prohibited waters. Taiwan's Coast Guard says this is the first intrusion into the restricted area by both Chinese law enforcement and commercial vessels. Some ships came as close as 4 nautical miles from Kinmen's coast. There's been an influx of Chinese Coast Guard ships in the area since the death of 2 Chinese fishers earlier this year. Officials say it's part of a pressure campaign by China to wear down Taiwan's resources. Over a month on from the massive earthquake that rocked Hualien, tourism to the area has yet to recover. The industry is a huge chunk of the economy of Taiwan's east coast, and businesses are struggling. Our reporter Reese Ayers meets some of those worst affected.
A stone's throw from destruction. This mountainside business, located north of Hualien City, is lucky to still be here after the huge magnitude 7.2 earthquake that struck Taiwan on April 3rd.
这边有一颗地震过后，然后蛮明显的一颗大石头，然后这个也是我们蛮心惊胆战的一个，因为它当初掉下来的时候卡在这边，现在很怕就是又来一个大地震，然后让它又滚落下去。对。
然后这里有人住吗？
当初是有人住，那我们也很怕后山的落石又会再掉下去，所以就是请里面的人员移到隔壁阿姨的房子去住这样子。
Meters away, the main building of the Dajili tribal house still standing, somehow relatively unscathed.
这个地方刚好是一个平台，那我们后山就是一个岩壁。那它其实有一些落石是它是往旁边的，那就是非常幸运，只有一些碗破掉，然后你看到一些艺术品都没有，都好好的。
But now that the worst of the quakes and aftershocks seem to have subsided, this business faces another problem.
Usually bustling with customers, this restaurant and Indigenous activity center is completely deserted. They've barely had any custom since the quake.
And that's because tourists are now too scared to visit.
我们陆续就接到好多电话，就开始一直退单，然后一直退到7、8月，订单全部都退掉。
And it could be a long while before things pick up. Businesses around Taroko National Park rely on tourists visiting the gorge for most of their income. But the park was closed after the quake and may not reopen for years.
大概到118年的时候，看有没有机会就完成整个的重建，因为有一些的灾损，它非常的严重，像萨卡当步道，那个部分几乎已经是崩山的一个状况。
The park's closure and the fear of aftershocks is affecting businesses all along the East Coast, in a county that heavily relies on tourism.
我们还在硬撑啊，看能撑多久算多久，因为毕竟你看我们现在没有收入了。 几乎只有本地客。
那客户就是害怕，因为怕说来这里住了，看到大楼倒塌了，不敢来了。那所以退单量几乎全部退到0了。
差了有10倍有，对。
But there may be hope on the horizon for businesses. Charity drives are generating huge amounts of cash. And Taiwan's central government recently approved a roughly $1 billion aid package to help rebuild the county and subsidize visitors' trips.
那确实对于花莲的这个观光产业来说是注入一剂强心针。那我们也期盼政府的这些振兴的方案能够带来旅客的一个信心的回流。
For now, businesses like Dajili Tribal House are using the downtime to expand their business models or carry out some much-needed repairs until Hualien County and visitors' faith in the area are restored. Patrick Chen, Joseph Wu and Reese Ayers in Hualien County for TaiwanPlus.
Indigenous activists who've been camping out near the presidential office in Taipei for nearly 8 years are ending their sit-in. They say the Tsai administration has failed them. Despite their decision to dismantle the camp, they say their fight for justice will continue. Tiffany Wong has the story.
Marking the end of an era at this years-long movement for Indigenous land rights. Singer-turned-activist Banai is saying goodbye to her temporary home of nearly 8 years, surrounded by close friends and collaborators.
辛苦大家，谢谢大家，一路上很关注我们，然后每个人用自己的方式送来给我们的关心。
This is the encampment where Banai has been living near the presidential office for the past 8 years to raise awareness of Indigenous land rights disputes. Now, after May 20th, when President Tsai Ing-wen leaves office, she's planning on heading back home to Taitung. But she's already left a strong impact raising awareness here in Taipei. And activists say that their calls for a return of government-seized lands to Indigenous people will continue.
The activists particularly took issue with Tsai, who they hoped would be a champion for Indigenous rights. When she entered office, she became the first president to apologize to Taiwan's Indigenous peoples for the oppression they faced by the government. And under her administration, the Council of Indigenous Peoples found that Indigenous people had claims over nearly half of Taiwan's land. But these activists say that since then, the government has ignored their calls to acknowledge those Indigenous lands now marked as private property. And with another president from Tsai's party coming into office, they are not hopeful for change, but are still going to keep fighting.
民进党没有很认真对待原住民过往的历史，那我们就只好自立自强，我们要更勇敢说出我们的诉求。海岸，海岸。
Throughout the occupation, people here held educational workshops and made protest art to draw attention to Indigenous land rights, all while facing pressures from police and the public.
警察有时候是来协调或是骚扰他们，就是当然这目的可能会希望他们从公园离开。那他们从这么长时间撑下来，撑到现在，然后才决定要离开，这件事情是在台湾的抗争史上面算是蛮厉害的。
Now they're making their stand one last time in front of the presidential office, where it all began 8 years ago, letting Tsai and her administration know that they are watching and will continue to campaign for Indigenous land they say is rightfully theirs. Ryan Wu and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
More remains of victims of a devastating 2021 train crash in eastern Taiwan have been found. As John Van Trieste reports, the new discovery is taking a toll on the families of those killed in the accident.
3 years after a fatal train crash in eastern Taiwan, victims' families are still far from closure. Workers have just found more remains of victims, 11 this time, and relatives have traveled to the crash site yet again to collect them. On April 2nd, 2021, a flatbed truck slid onto the tracks that connect East Taiwan with the rest of the country. An oncoming train hit the truck at the entrance to a tunnel and derailed. 49 died and around 200 were injured, making it Taiwan's deadliest train wreck in decades. After workers found new remains in 2023, victims' relatives asked for a more thorough search of the crash site. But the fact that remains keep turning up has kept relatives' wounds fresh.
它本身就是一直在营运通车，你进去也不是这么容易，心情就是既期待，但是又很纠结，但是又觉得很荒谬。
A lawyer representing victims' families is calling for new approaches to handling disasters of this scale to minimize relatives' pain.
对于这个各单位之间在灾害现场如何横向联络，而能够具体完成这些事项，要有一个沟通的模式。
The district prosecutor's office, whose staff accompanied family members to the crash site, has agreed to look into how to respond to future disasters.
我们在去年发生这个车厢内有这个疑似被害人遗骨的事件发生之后，那我们各单位也都责成尽速的去检讨后续遇到类似案件的一个搜证以及清理的作业流程。那我们会依照行政院会议所颁布的一个原则去要求督导相关的单位。
But as officials think about future disasters, the families of crash victims are still grappling with how to move on from the events of 2021. Delphine Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
The government has launched an initiative for the future of Taiwan's tech industry. The chip-based industrial innovation program has earmarked investment of over $9 billion over the next 10 years. Key features include integrating generative AI into Taiwan's semiconductor sector, attracting and retaining domestic and global talent, and bringing startups and investors to Taiwan. Representatives from the tech industry, government officials, and academics attended the program's official launch. Taiwan's first domestic weather satellite will start sending back data on sea surface conditions next month, ahead of the country's typhoon season. Launched last October, the Triton satellite is designed to predict typhoon intensities. Developed by the Taiwan Space Agency, it'll collect sea surface wind data that will help with typhoon path predictions. The data that Triton provides will go toward a collaboration with the Central Weather Administration to improve the accuracy of weather forecasts. The Solomon Islands has voted in a new government, one that's expected to continue developing good relations with China. The Solomons broke off ties with Taiwan in 2019. It's a decision that has had a lasting effect on many people in the Pacific Island nation, as Louise Watt now reports from Honiara.
These old machines remind mechanic Andrew Lano of a better time, when Taiwan was running agricultural projects here in the Solomon Islands. The East Asian country taught farmers how to grow rice, guava and dragon fruit to boost agriculture. But that was before the Solomon Islands cut ties with Taipei in favor of Beijing. Now the Taiwanese are gone, leaving this equipment that Lano maintains.
We are very, very sorry about Taiwan. That's what Taiwan do for us. It's very, very good. When we have problem, we go to them, they help us. When they are here, there are lots, many farmers come.
While times have changed, Taiwan's legacy is still visible. Here, the corn, sweet potato and papaya they planted. The Solomon Islands Agricultural Ministry now distributes the seedlings to poorer provinces under a system the Taiwanese set up. But most other Taiwanese development projects have been abandoned. Taiwan built rice paddies on this plot of land on the edge of the capital Honiara, teaching farmers from remote areas how to plant rice, so the country wouldn't have to import so much. But after Taiwan left in 2019, it was turned into a football field. There is still a lot of support for Taiwan in the Solomon Islands, though it's one of 10 allies China has poached since 2016, as the Beijing government presses its claims of sovereignty over Taiwan. As in other Pacific Island nations, China has come in and built large infrastructure projects, like the venues for the Pacific Games, an Olympic-style event that the Solomon Islands hosted for the first time thanks to China's support, lending prestige to the island's then Prime Minister. Beijing and Honiara say their partnership is about promoting development and alleviating poverty in the Solomon Islands. But others see the country as a pawn in China's greater goal of control over Taiwan.
So they have actually left a lot of legacy, but at the moment it's been kind of wiped out by the activities, the geopolitical competition that is going on here in Solomon Islands, where both Solomon Islands and Taiwan equally victims in this game.
While there is still appreciation here for how much Taiwan has done, China is determined to outshine it, increasing its foothold with every new development. And though gone for several years now, it remains hard for many Solomon Islanders to close the door completely on Taiwan. Klein Wong and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching. Here's what happened. Finally, check out these scenes of over 250,000 runners across 169 countries taking part in the world's biggest run for charity. I'm Philip Brossard. Take care, and we'll see you next time.